Morning, church family. Please open your Bibles to the book of Luke. My name is Courtney, and I have the honor of reading our scripture today from Luke chapter 23, verses 32 through 43. Luke chapter 23, 32 through 43. These words come to us recorded by human hands under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, and therefore they come to us today as the very word of God. So let's ready our hearts to hear together the word of our Lord from Luke chapter 23, verses 32 through 43. Two others who were criminals were led away to be put to death with him. And when they came to the place that is called the Skull, there they crucified him, and the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. And Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And they cast lots to divide his garments, and the people stood by watching. But the rulers scoffed at him, saying, "He saved others. Let him save himself, if he is the Christ of God, his chosen one." The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wine, and saying, "If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself." There was also an inscription over him, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who were hanged railed at him, saying, "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we are receiving the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." And he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And he said to him, "Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. If you're familiar with the ministry of Jesus, there's oftentimes pairs of things throughout his ministry. He's often kind of creating a comparison between two different things. So, for example, the sheep and the goats, right? Or the wheat and the tares. Or the two houses, right? The one on the rock, the one on the sand. The two brothers, the younger prodigal son, of course, the older brother. And then here at the end of Jesus' ministry, the thieves, the two thieves, one on his right and one on his left. And there's a lot to learn from these comparisons. If you pay attention throughout the ministry of Jesus, they're always in there. There's always these comparisons. Now, one of the principles that comes up as you consider this is that it's very hard to know. The difference between the two from a distance, right? So the sheep and the goats, right? If you're in the countryside and you see a bunch of sheep on the hill far away, you can't really tell if they're sheep or they're goats. You have to go close to them to be able to discern, are these sheep or are these goats? Or the wheat and the tares, right? I mean, you have to hold the wheat in your hand. You have to sift it to know, is this wheat or is this the tare? The two houses. I mean, this even gets harder, right, with the houses. It's two beautiful houses. One's on the rock, one's on the sand. But if you're just looking at them from the outside, you might not even tell which one is built on the bedrock or which one's on the sand. Actually, a storm has to come to reveal which one is on the rock or which one is on the sand. And here the two sons. Same thing. That one's even more interesting. The older and the younger son, the story of the prodigal son. I mean, that story, what's so interesting about it is you would actually think when you read the story that one son is saved and one son is doomed. You would think that the whole story until the very end. And then you see it's actually the other way around. These stories, they actually tell us a lot about this idea of saving faith, about who is saved, what it means to know God, what it means to really have a heart for God, and what it means to not have a heart for God, who is close to God and who is far from God. And then here at the end of Jesus' life, you have this story, and it's an incredibly telling story. Jesus, of course, was crucified right outside of Jerusalem. He'd been crucified right on a highway. And he was crucified in this public place because the Romans wanted the people to see, right? They wanted the people to walk by and be warned, right? Don't do it. Mike, it could happen to you too. So watch out. Don't do this thing. And I'm sure all the passersby that day, when they looked up and they saw these three thieves, these three criminals, I'm sure all the passersby just thought they're all bad guys. You know, they all had it coming to them. They all did something wrong and they are getting their due. But like all of these stories, if we take a little closer look, you know, if we don't just judge the outward appearance, but we peer into the heart here, we can learn a lot from the first thief, from the second thief, and from the third thief. So let's take a look at the first thief here. You know, think about this guy. I mean, this is Jesus on the cross. I mean, this is one of the most fundamental, amazing scenes, one of the most key scenes in all of world history. I mean, this is Jesus on the cross. This is a key scene. And this guy has a front row seat. I mean, he is right there. He is, not only does he have a front row seat, he has a front row experiencing. He's hanging on a cross next to Jesus as he's dying. And yet, even though he sees Jesus so personally in this moment, in many ways he misses what's going on here. But in some ways he understands what's going on here. In fact, there's probably more similarities between us and this first thief than we'd probably like to admit. He says to Jesus, "Are you not the Christ? You know, are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." And in this little statement, we can learn a lot about how people go to God, about what people present before God, about how people approach God. Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us. The first impulse, when we approach God, the first impulse is the self-righteous impulse, right? We like to think that things have gone well for me, that things are going well for me because of what I've done. You know, I've been good. I did what I was supposed to do. I followed the rules. And that's why it's going well with me and why it's going so poorly with him, right? We like to think, well, of course, I've worked harder, I've done more, and maybe I'm smarter. And therefore, I am taken care of. Therefore, God kind of owes me this. Therefore, you have to respect me. Therefore, I am blessed. Now, none of us actually talk that way, okay? We know that we're not supposed to congratulate ourselves so much. We know we're not supposed to talk about our own self-righteousness so much. And so we code it. We say things like, well, I got really lucky. Or I'm blessed to be a part of a great team. Or, well, you know, I just had to work really hard. And we say things like that. But in many cases, that's just code for I'm awesome. You know, it should go well for me, right? I've done what I was supposed to do. I did the right things. I did the good things, and that person didn't do the good things. You know, I've cited this article before. It's a great little article that David Brooks wrote last summer in the Atlantic magazine. And he talks about how people use the word humbled right before they're about to brag on themselves. You know, they use the word humbled as kind of a way to like brag on yourself but not feel bad about it. He says, he calls it a humility display. He says in a humility display, you must always use the word humbled when the word proud would actually be more accurate. For example, humbled to make the 100 under 100 list in the Arbitrary List magazine. Humbled, truly humbled to be the keynote speaker at the TEDx East Hampton. Humbled that Cameron Diaz is giving me a ride to Bradley Cooper's surprise birthday party. Just thought I'd mention it. He goes on to say, the key to humility display is to use self-effacement as a tool to maximize your own self-promotion. He goes, the whole point of humility display is to signal that you're humbled by your own magnificent accomplishments. We can all be humbled by an awesome mountain or the infinitude of a night sky, but to be humbled by being in the presence of yourself, that is a sign of truly great humility. You know, Jesus actually wrote a similar article. It's in Luke 18. And he tells the story of these two men. He says two men went up to the temple, went up to the place of God, right? The place where the Spirit of God dwelled. They went to go pay homage to God, right? That's why you go to the temple. Two men went to the temple. One was a Pharisee and the other was a tax collector. Obviously, the Pharisee, the more righteous person here. But he says the Pharisee standing by himself in the temple. That's where you pay homage to God. And he says, God, I thank you that I'm not like these other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector here, right? So humbled to not be a tax collector, right? So humbled to not be an adulterer or an extortioner. I fast twice a week. I give tithes on all that I get. He's in the temple. He's praying. He seems so humble. But what is he saying? He's saying, I'm better than everyone. I'm righteous. That's why it's gone well for me. I'm not like this tax collector. I'm not like an adulterer. And that's why it's gone bad for them. And look, before you look down your nose, before you like self-righteously look on the self-righteous Pharisee, let's all admit that we all have this impulse. We all want to hold out our righteous deeds. Say, look, I've been so righteous. I've done well. It may not be necessarily religiously righteous deeds, but I've worked hard. I've built this great business. I've got all this money. I've done these things. Here, the first thief is on the cross, and this is his heart. He says, we'll go back to our text here, are you not the Christ? Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us. He's basically saying, some Messiah you are. You think you're the Messiah? Look at you now. You're on the cross. I can almost hear him saying, I'm not perfect or anything, but at least I never claimed to be the Messiah. At least I never claimed to be a savior. At least I'm not like this fool. We all have this self-righteous impulse to think more of ourselves and to think less of others, even in our worst moments. Even when we're at the end of the line, we're always looking for someone else who's even a little further down the line than us. Even in our worst moments, we have this self-righteous impulse to look down our nose at someone else and say, well, at least I'm better than him. The irony of this moment is that here's this thief on the cross looking down at Jesus, the only one who could actually save him, the only one who could actually do something to help him. So the first way we come to God is with our self-righteousness. The second way that we come to God is with cynicism, right? A lot of people come to God with cynicism. And that's how this thief, it's in his tone here. Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us. Basically, like if you really were the Christ, you wouldn't be on the cross. If you were really the Messiah, you wouldn't be dying, and neither would we. A lot of people I talk to, they have a cynicism toward God, and maybe some of you do. How could you believe in God that lets all these horrible things happen? How could you believe in a God that dies on the cross? God can't be good. God can't be powerful. How could God let things like that happen? I mean, look at all the evil in the world. How can you believe in a good God? How can you believe in Jesus? I can see the first thief saying, Jesus, if you're really the Christ, you wouldn't be on the cross. This bad thing wouldn't be happening to you, and it wouldn't be happening to us. And you go to God with your righteousness, but you can also go to God with your cynicism and tell God how you would do it better, right? This is the heart of the cynic, right? If God were really loving, he would. If God were really good, well, then he would. If God were really understanding, then of course he would do this. If you're basically saying, if I were God, I would do it this way. This is obvious. Is that what your faith is like, though? Some of you here today, and you're struggling. You're struggling with something bad that's happened. You're struggling with something that you feel is unjust. And you're going to God and you're saying, God, if you were really good, you never would have done this. God, if you were really good, this never would have happened this way. Or, there's no way that you exist because this is going on right now. And no good God, according to me, right, no good God would ever do that. You're a cynic. That's one of the postures that people go to God with, cynicism. But I want to tell you, before we get to the next point, I just want to tell you, it's actually when you find yourself disagreeing with God, when you find God saying something hard to you, when you find God, saying something that you don't like, that you actually are starting to believe in God. He's not just some made-up friend. He's not just some fairy tale friend that makes you feel better. You can kind of rub when you get, when you get uncomfortable, like a rabbit's foot or something. No, he's actually really a God. He really has a personality. He really has a law. He really has a truth. And sometimes you disagree with that. That's actually how you know you're entering into a personal relationship with God, and it's not just your imagination. But you can go to God with your righteousness. You can go to God with your cynicism. And the third thing that we see here is, he went to God with his pragmatism. Right? Are you not the Christ? You want to be the Messiah? You want to be my Messiah? Okay, let's start here. Save yourself and then save me. Get me off the cross. You want me to follow you? You want to be my Messiah? Great. Get me off the cross, and then you'll be my Messiah. Then I'll follow you. I'll do whatever you want me to do. A lot of people have this kind of relationship with God, a pragmatic relationship with God. God, if you just do this for me, then I'll do this for you. Or I'll obey you if you do this for me. And the sad thing is we all have this natural impulse. We want to make a good deal for ourselves. We all have this natural impulse. But sadly, a lot of preachers talk about a relationship with God this way. I've heard a preacher recently say, I follow God because he's given me such a great life. Or, even softer, some preachers will say, well, if you just follow this biblical principle, then you will be blessed. But it's pragmatic. It's just a means to an end. God is not here an end unto himself. He's just your tool. Don't you see? Martin Luther, he prayed to God to get out of a thunderstorm. He was caught in this horrible downpour, horrible thunderstorm, horrible lightning. And he said, God, if you'll get me out of the lightning storm, if you get me out of the thunderstorm, I'll go to the monastery. I'll go to the monastery for you. And God saved him. And he went to the monastery. But you know what? He was miserable. And he didn't love God. He didn't have a relationship with God. Why? Because God was just a tool for him. He feared God. And he thought, maybe if I could just be good enough, then God would have to bless me. But here's the thing with Martin Luther. He was honest enough with himself. He realized, I'm actually not that good. I really have nothing to offer a good God. And so he tortured himself trying to be good enough to get a good deal from God. He was in the monastery and he was miserable. And he realized he couldn't be good enough and the world would always be full of trouble. You see, if your faith is, if I follow these good principles, then it will go well with me. That's your faith. If that's your faith, you can't ever really love God. You never really will know God. God will just be a tool for you. God's just your servant. God's just the guy that, God's just your guru, right? But he's not your God. He's not your treasure. He's not the thing that you desire. He's just someone that helps you get to the thing that you desire. It's a pragmatic, it's an operational view of God. And look, here's the deal. If you really get honest with yourself, you realize I'm not that good at following these principles. I'm not that honest. I'm not that holy. My heart is not that pure. And sometimes when it seems like I'm really good at following the principles, I'm only doing it for selfish gain. What does that say about my heart? The first thief went to God with his self-righteousness. I may be bad, but I'm not as bad as him. He went with his cynicism. If God was really good, then he wouldn't be on a cross. And he went with his pragmatism. You want to be a Messiah? How about you start by getting me off the cross, then we'll believe. And many of us come to God in the exact same way. And if that's how you come to God, you'll never find him. But the second thief came totally different. Notice how he begins here. It's very interesting what happens here in verse 40. It says, the other thief rebuked him. The other thief is listening to this dialogue with the first thief, and the second thief rebukes him. Now, here's what's interesting. In Matthew 27, we read that both thieves were rebuking Jesus, were reviling Jesus, were talking down to Jesus. Both thieves in Matthew 27. Yet here, this thief, something's happened to him. He's had a change of heart. He's had some sort of conversion experience. Now, we don't have a lot of details, but somewhere along the way, he saw something in Jesus, he heard something from Jesus, and his eyes were opened, and he believed. He had some sort of a conversion. Look what it says. It's very fascinating. The first thief comes with his self-righteousness, his cynicism, his pragmatism. But then this thief steps up and he says he rebuked him. And he rebukes his self-righteousness. Look, he says, do you not fear God? Don't you realize you are under the same sentence of condemnation? I love this. He's totally calling out his self-righteousness. He's like, who do you think you are? You're looking down on Jesus. You're on a cross. What's wrong with you? Don't you see that you have the exact same sentence of condemnation? You think you're so righteous, but who do you think you are? You are a criminal too. We are sinners. We're thieves. We have nothing to offer. And then he rebukes his cynicism. Look what he says here in 41. He says, we indeed justly, for we're receiving the due reward for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong. We are here justly. We live in a cynical and blaming world. We live in a cynical and blaming world. There's always somebody to blame. And I'm sure the first thief, he blamed the Romans. He blamed the rigged system, you know. He blamed his parents, right? He had lousy parents. He blamed his teachers. Man, he had that lousy teacher. If she would have just done better, he could have gotten into better college and he never would have ended up on a cross. Or he blamed his boss, you know. He had that lousy boss, you know. And we're just like that. We're blamers. It's always somebody else's fault, you know. You're coming here today and you're mad at your boss. Man, I hate that guy too, just so you know. But anyway, no, we're blamers. And you know what? That's the age we live in. We live in a blaming age. We live in a blaming age because we're so high on humanity, right? In a humanistic, a secular humanistic age where we are the answer. Human beings are the answer. If there's anything wrong with the world, then it's got to be those kinds of humans, right? It's them, right? It's people like that. It's the rich people. It's the poor people. It's the Republicans. It's the Democrats. It's them. It's them. It's them. The second thief says, we're here justly. We got nobody to blame. We are under a right sentence of condemnation. We are here justly, but not this man. He is innocent. He has done nothing wrong. And Jesus, then he looks at Jesus and he says, Jesus, remember me. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. Remember me, Jesus, when you come into your kingdom. And this thief, this second thief, in this little statement, gives us one of the clearest pictures of what saving faith really is. He comes to Jesus with nothing. He comes to Jesus as a criminal on a cross. And he says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. He doesn't come to him with righteousness. He doesn't come to him with cynicism. He doesn't try to make a deal with him. He just says, will you remember me when you come into your kingdom? Reminds me of the old song, Rock of Ages. We sang it last week. I love these words. Nothing in my hand I bring. Simply to the cross I cling. Naked, come to thee for dress. Helpless, look to thee for grace. Foul, I to the fountain fly. Wash me, Savior, or I die. He doesn't come with any cynicism. We are here justly. He doesn't come blaming anyone. He doesn't come trying to make a deal, trying to get something out of him. You know, Martin Luther was in that monastery and he was miserable because he realized he really couldn't make a deal with God because he would never be good enough to have anything to offer God. And he was miserable, and that so plagued him. And he was miserable until he understood Romans 1:17, which says, the righteous shall live by faith. And that's what this man came to realize. I have no righteousness. I have nobody to blame but myself. I have no deal to make. And so, Jesus, will you just remember me? Will you just remember me? Remember the story of the self-righteous Pharisee? It says there's two men in the story, the Pharisee and the tax collector. Verse 13, we see the second half. Jesus says, the tax collector, standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, but he beat his breast And he said, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. And Jesus says, I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. 2 men here, 2 men in the temple. We have to get out of that to our list. This man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but he who humbles himself will be exalted. This is how the second thief came. And this is why he was justified. Jesus, remember me. When you come into your kingdom, remember me. He doesn't come to Jesus with any demands. He doesn't come to Jesus with any expectation. Here's the thing. He has no idea where Jesus is going. He has no idea. He doesn't know Jesus. He has no idea what his kingdom is like. All the people have rejected Jesus. All the people have laughed at Jesus. Yet this thief has seen something so true, so beautiful, so right in Jesus that he says, look, wherever he is going, that's where I want to go to. Is that how you've come to Jesus? Is that how you've come to Jesus? Nothing in my hand I bring. There is just something so right and good and beautiful in you that wherever you're going, I want to get there too. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said to him, truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. I sent this little video clip to you in my Friday email. But it's Alistair Begg. He's talking about justification in Christ alone. And he's saying that, in order to be justified, there's nothing really we can do. If we say, I am justified because then you've missed the whole point. It's only, I am justified, I'm right with God because Jesus, because what have Jesus has done for me? He's making this point. He talks about the thief on the cross as just this perfect example. 1 minute, this is an amazing story. 1 minute he's railing on Jesus. He is a criminal on a cross looking down at Jesus. There's 1 minute he's doing that. And then he sees something so beautiful, something so powerful, something so right in the person of Jesus that he says, look, he's got it. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. And the next thing he knows, that same day, he's with Jesus. He's in the kingdom. He's in paradise. And Alistair Begg talks about how when this criminal gets up there, the angel at the heavenly gates has no idea what to do with him. Well, we weren't expecting this guy. He says, well, hold on, before you go in there, can you explain the doctrine of justification by faith alone? And of course, the guy is like, I have no idea what you're talking about. He says, well, what about the doctrine of Scripture? Can you explain the doctrine? He says, I never heard of it. He says, well, what do you hear? How did you get here? What are you doing here? And the thief just says to the angel, well, you see, the man on the middle cross said I could come. That was the only reason that he was justified. And here's the deal. That's the only reason that any of you are justified. It's the only reason I am justified. The man on the middle cross said we could come in. So we've looked at the first thief, how he went to God. The second thief, how he went to God. But what about the third thief? You see, you have to understand this, what Jesus is doing to really get this scene. This is Jesus. He's the Son of God. He only knew peace and righteousness with his Father. He only knew harmony with his Father. He lived out, Jesus is a fountain of righteousness. He only could do what is right. Yet in this moment, the righteous was identifying with the unrighteous so profoundly. He's identifying with criminals. He's identifying with thieves. He's identifying with people at the execution moment. The Bible tells us that he who knew no sin became sin. He took on our sin. He identified with our sin. He took on our record of sin so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Jesus became our sin and died in our place. I love the way 1 Peter says it this way: Christ suffered once for sin. He was paying for all sin, for your sin, for my sin, for the thief's sin, the righteous, for all of the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God. Jesus, who had fellowship with God, was put out of fellowship with God, so we who are out of fellowship with God in our sin could be brought into fellowship with God through faith in Jesus. Do you see how the third thief, Jesus, went to God? You see how Jesus went to his Father? He went to his Father with wounds on his hands. He went to his Father with stripes on his back. He went to his Father, as the song says, with my name graven in his hand, my name written on his heart. He went to his Father with his perfect righteousness and his atoning blood that he shed in your place and mine. And so that he can say to this thief, this criminal who'd never been to a Bible study, who never served the poor, who never read his Bible, who never gave a dime to the church, this thief who had nothing to offer, he can say to him, today, on my behalf, today you will be with me in paradise. For nothing you have done, but only everything that I have done. So the final thought then is, what does this mean for us? Here's this thief, totally helpless, with nothing to offer God. And we believe that he has been with the Lord ever since. He's been with the Lord ever since. He's enjoying the greatest thing you could ever enjoy, the greatest thing you could ever have, intimacy with God. Here's this thief, nothing to offer God, and yet he's with God. What does this mean for us? Well, first, no matter where you are today, this is good news. I mean, this is good news. You know, some of you walked in here, self-righteous Pharisees. Good news. Good news. God forgives self-righteous Pharisees. He forgives cynics. This thief was that. He just was, a few moments before, he was wagging his tail at Jesus, just like the other thief. He was saying the same kind of things as the other thief. Some of you walked in here cynical toward the things of God. You walked in here trying to get a deal from God, saying, why hasn't God done this for me? Good news for you today. Look, in simple faith, turn to Jesus. Some of you walked in here today with so much shame and sin on your hand. You said, if these people knew what I did, you're embarrassed even to be here a little bit. Let me tell you, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you've done, but nobody's worse off than this guy. Nobody's literally being condemned for their crimes right now on a cross. And if Jesus can say to him, you will be with me in paradise, he can say that to you. This is good news for everyone. Have this posture, have this heart. Turn to Jesus and say, remember me. Turn away from your self-righteousness and your cynicism and your sin and just say, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And he will. That's the great invitation and good news of the gospel. Second, here's a question. Is your faith a saving faith? All these stories of twos that I mentioned, they all tell us about saving faith. What is saving faith like? Is yours a saving faith? Are you the sheep or are you the goat? Are you the prodigal that came into the party? Are you the older son? Are you the house on the rock? Are you the house on the sand? Is your faith a saving faith? And here's what it comes down to. Are you really trusting in Jesus, or are you ultimately just believing in yourself? Are you really trusting in Jesus? Or are you trusting in something else? Are you trusting in Jesus and nothing else? Are you really coming to him with nothing? You know the song we just sang? Grace that is greater than all our sin. Dark is the stain that I cannot hide. What can avail to wash it away? You know, I can't hide this. You know, God knows this about me. There's nothing I can hide. What can avail to make me pure before God? And then I love the response. Look, praise God, look. There is flowing a crimson tide, the blood of Jesus. Look, the blood of Jesus. Whiter than snow can you be today. Grace, God's grace. Grace greater than all our sin. Do you believe that? Do you have a saving faith? Do you have a saving faith in Jesus? Or are you still trying to save yourself? Are you still trying to hold on to your righteousness? Are you still mad at God because you would have chosen differently? Or do you have a saving faith? Can you rest in him and just say, remember me? Finally, faith is more than a confession. Faith is more than a confession. When you really have a faith, your functional faith and your saving faith line up. Line up. This is why James says, faith without works is dead. It's not that it takes more than faith to save us. It certainly doesn't, according to this story. But genuine faith is a living faith. Right? Genuine faith is alive. It's not just a confession. It's a living faith. It's not a dead faith. Faith is alive. Does your functional faith, how you're living, line up with your confessional faith? What you're confessing, what you're saying, what you're doing? Do you have a saving faith? And do you realize that faith is more than just a confession? Is your functional faith aligned with your confessional faith? Remember the story of Jonah? Remember Jonah, prophet of Israel? God says, hey, look, go to Nineveh. I want you to go preach. I want you to go preach to them just the same way. I want to see the same kind of conversions that we're seeing right here. God says, go preach to Nineveh. And Jonah hated the Ninevites. And so he blatantly disobeys God. He so blatantly disobeys him, he runs the other direction. He runs away from what he believed was the presence of God, going the opposite direction of Nineveh toward Tarshish. The blatant disobedience of God. And he gets on the boat, heading to Tarshish, and you know the story. There's a storm on the sea, and the waters are raging, and all of the pagan sea people are like, wait a second, what's going on here? And Jonah's asleep on the boat, and they wake him up, and they say, who are you? What are you doing here? What are you doing to us? And you know what Jonah says? You know what he confesses? He says, I am Jonah. I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven. That's what he said. Now it's like, no, you don't. You don't fear God. You're literally running from God right now. You're literally blatantly disobeying God right now. His confession, pristine. The functionality of his confession, far from the things of the Lord. Don't you see? Is your functional faith and your confessional faith the same? Do you really believe? Can you really look at Jesus and say, wherever you're going, I want to go. Wherever you're going, I want to be with you. Will you remember me when you come into your kingdom? Is that your heart today? Because you see, if it is, then you would get rid of, you would do something about this anger problem that you have. You wouldn't just say it's no big deal. If really you wanted to be wherever Jesus was, you'd be fighting greed in your life. Because you wouldn't want anything to separate you from God. If you really want to say, man, wherever Jesus is going, I'm with him, then you'd be doing everything you could to fight this porn addiction that you have. Is your functional faith and your confessional faith the same? That's how you know it's really a saving faith. We're saved by faith alone, but not faith that is alone, right? Faith is living. Is your faith living? If it really was, then you would be in community with other believers because you would love the people of God. If it really was, then you'd be doing something about the mission of God because whatever Jesus says, you want to do because wherever Jesus goes, you want to go. Is your faith really alive? Is yours a saving faith? Is yours a saving faith? Or are you coming to Jesus with some sort of, well, I go to church. I've said the confession, of course, that's all you want, right? I've been baptized. Or maybe you're coming to Jesus with some sort of cynicism or trying to make some deal. Well, I'll do this for you, but you better do this back for me. The sheep and the goats, right? The wheat and the tare, 2 houses, 2 sons, 2 thieves. One comes to Jesus with all his self-righteousness and his cynicism and his pragmatism. One comes to Jesus with simple faith. And just says, remember me. Remember me. I've got nothing to offer you. Remember me. And Jesus said to him, truly, truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. Which thief are you identifying with? How are you coming to our Lord? Let's pray. Father, I pray now that you would give us ears to hear, eyes to see, hearts to believe. You would help us to discern our own heart, who we are before you, how we stand before you, Lord. And Father, I pray that you would give us faith. You would give us faith, genuine faith, real, living faith. To believe what we sang earlier, that our only hope in life and our only hope in death is Christ the Lord. I pray that confession would be real in our lives. We'd live like that, Lord. I pray, Father, by the power of your Spirit, even now, you would bring conviction. You would bring faith. You would help us to believe in the good news of the gospel. And you would turn our hearts away from lesser things to the beauty and the fullness of Jesus. That we would see something so right and something so beautiful and something so good in him that we would have to say, wherever he is going, wherever he is, I want to be there too. Remember me. Remember me, Lord, when you come into your kingdom. That's all we can say. But if we can say that, we can say it all. Father, hear these prayers in the name of Jesus. Amen.